So it's, this has been a very interesting experience with Saturn hitting resets on all those, very personal, planets in my chart, and moving towards its eventual connection with Neptune in my 11th house, which I think is going to be very intense. So, I'm really, I guess, I'm kind of preparing myself for that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So that's it. I mean, that's how I've been. And clarity has been a really interesting byproduct of all of this. And I've enjoyed the clarity. And sometimes, along with the clarity, I'm running on a little bit here, Molly, but along with the clarity, the emotional piece that would be obfuscated when, after, you have a couple glasses of wine sometimes, and alienation or loneliness or some of these things, for lack of a better term, and pun certainly not intended, can be mollified, right? And now that I'm not doing, I'm dealing with these feelings very directly, and it's not. I got to tell you, it gets easier over time, but it's kind of challenging.
Well, I did, see that blog, and it was very powerful. And when you're talking, I get that isolated father, but in a public role, and because we don't have kids, I was thinking, well, I'm not in that club. That was one thing that came out of reading what you wrote, and there's different clubs. Sometimes I'm in the store and I see a woman just in bliss with her child, and I just, in this life, that's not going to be me. And being someone who does nurture and mother, and because you've given me readings, more my deeper story, but just I wonder if there's a role for you to play for other men in your position, because it is such a public house, and I don't know how that would manifest, but you're such a great writer. It could be a book or an ebook, or lately when I've read your pieces, I've just been, especially that piece on Oakland, which was so dark, but so vivid for me, the pictures that you painted. So yeah, I could see you. I have lately, when I've read your pieces, thought, gosh, he just paints the scenes, and these scenes, I'm sure there are a lot of Hollywood dads that have gone through that. They're in high positions, and not saying that just because it could be a moneymaker, but just because it's a human story, and finding the universal through your story, I think it could be a great story for the screen or anywhere.
Well, certainly, I'm just in the first chapters of that, and I'm just getting myself acquainted to what it feels like, and it's interesting, and it's even more interesting, dealing with it without any kind of, sort of cushion, some sort of recreational cushion, and that's an interesting piece. What about you?
Well, I have Saturn right in my Mars, and I know all the stories about that. I have come through the difficult recently, Saturn opposing Saturn and Saturn squaring Sun, and it hasn't been easy, and it's interesting because we live in such a peaceful place, but I've been extremely agitated and needing to really look at things. I streamlined my Netflix, and you were talking about wine, and for me, movies at night were kind of like my wine. I could check out. I didn't have to think too hard after all day of writing or walking around in the garden or working in the garden, and it's been interesting because I think that intuitively, I know I want to create more from my imagination, but first I have to be able to tolerate more of that. Like Saturn can feel like you're, like it's a boredom or something there that feels like there's nothing on the other side of it for me. But I know that the key is to let that, to kind of be with that long enough for it to do what it needs to come out. It has to have some expression. Yeah. And I know, I just want to shout out to Mari Kozik Ashaban. She's has the same birthday as me. She's listening today. Maybe she'll call in on your second hour. And Janet, if she's listening, and Teresa, and Gloria, who I know from Facebook. But like I told you, one thing I realized with having a lot of Saturn energy on me is, and I noticed you pulled away from Facebook. That's one thing I knew I needed to do, but I had to actually do ritual around it. The pull was so great because I do have that Gemini moon, and I love to know what's going on. I love, to hear what people are thinking about. But it just became, I wasn't inhabiting my own website. I needed to come back to my website. And it's really, even just less than 48 hours, it's made a huge difference.
It's interesting when we shift our attention like that, I had something similar, I think it was like 2008. I was posting a lot on this message board it was a sports message board for the Golden State Warriors, and it just felt like my ideas and my voice wasn't really going in the right direction. It wasn't the right context, and I just and I got really frustrated, and what I did is I deleted my connection to that forum. I mean, it was gone, and it didn't come back until they cycled through all their posts, and then the forum came back up again, and I was able to see it when they renamed that forum. But during that time, that's when I got my website up and running. So I had to make a trade-off, and I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I had to think about the people that I know that are not on Facebook, and I can count those people on one hand. One of them is my mother, and that's what's interesting too. I met someone at a party the other day that's not on Facebook. It's been on my mind a long time. I tried to do the thing where you just minimally participate, but because I had this page with so many fans, I felt that I wanted to participate more, but then it would bring me into, I don't want to start talking about the 2012 election, a year away. The other thing is, this is really interesting. I don't know if other people feel this, but I feel more in the now, because there's something really, and maybe it's because I have Pluto and Uranus in the 7th house. There's something very anchoring for me to have, but not in a good way, to have connections to all the people that I've ever known in my life, like in different cities. I had 2 men that I dated on there that I was connected to. And maybe I'm just hyper aware of all the people that I was connected to. But then when you leave, there's sort of this psych op that happens, because I don't know if you've deactivated, but it shows like 4 pictures, and it says, so-and-so is going to miss you. And has and what was interesting about that, it was Michael Tellinger, who doesn't really know who I am anyway. Michael's going to miss you. And then it said, Anna Hall, who's my sister-in-law, and I'll see her next week at Thanksgiving. And then Patty, my friend from New York, who is so busy she doesn't really return my emails. But my point is that I think that they have a genius for keeping you hooked in there.
Oh, yeah.
Emotionally. And it has been, it's the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's huge for me. I got deeper into it this time. I was in there about a year and a half, I had a profile before that I also deactivated. So, you know what I think this is, Robert, is it's good for me to come back, as lonely as it feels, to come back to myself. My thoughts, you know, my connection to the earth, my real connections. And when I couldn't sleep the night before I was going to do it, and then I picked one of my medicine cards and I got the wolf, and it was about seek out the lonely places, devoid of human voices. Yeah. And so I think when we look at this grand trine that we're having in this Mars Virgo, I think that the part of the dis-ease that so many are feeling is coming from the body being disconnected from the head. And one of my friends, I was kind of trying to get a pep talk about doing this because it's just so radical, leaving Facebook, that is. And she said, well, her girlfriend she has a lot, she sees the pull of it and the repulsion, the pull and the repulsion, and that there's, and the stagnation around it and the sense of not being physical, like you're there in your chair. And because I work online, I'm already in my chair a lot of the day. Yeah. And so just to say that I do connect it to these earth energies that are coming up, because I think to make the most of them, it's good to be outside, to be watching your community, to be meeting people in person, talking people, you know, Jupiter, Taurus, your voice, making things with your hands, exercising. Yeah. And being aware, too, of what's going on, not just what people are telling you what's going on, but your observations, your direct observations. Right. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think Facebook is so, it's insidious in some ways. And look, I think it also serves a purpose in its own way. Like I know that there are people that are pretty isolated, and you know they don't necessarily have a strong network of friends or associates around them, and yet they may have, you know, 150, 200, 300 friends on Facebook, out of which, you know, they may have connections with 30 or 40 of them. And, you know, we live in such an isolated society and alienated culture that maybe for some of those people that can actually be a really good experience, and they, you know, and they could use that. And I won't pass judgment on Facebook to that extent. But on the other hand, I just see it also as being, it was like, for me, Facebook is like AOL 2.0, right? AOL started off as kind of like, hey, we're the internet. You know, and people didn't really know that there was another internet outside of AOL, but because it was so new, people just associated AOL with the internet. Early brand, early adoption, of course, AOL, deep connections with the defense industry. And then eventually people figured out, well, I can get out of AOL. There's other things outside of AOL. There's a whole other World Wide Web out there. And for me, Facebook is really the second iteration of America Online, and replete with all those military-industrial, you know, complex connections. I mean, DARPA is, you know, interwoven with Facebook at a very deep level. And my feeling is that in the future, people are going to be almost forced to go through Facebook for almost every function in their life. And you can already see that if you want to, you know, post a comment on a website like the New York Times, for instance, if you want to post a comment there, well, Facebook is right there. Just sign into Facebook and you can post that comment, you know, and it's so much easier, it's so much more convenient to just type that in, just hit Facebook, yeah, let's do that. I'm on Facebook, just hit that, connect me,